Baby, food is ready.
I'm not hungry. Everybody think I'm a monster. They say I look hideous.
No, you don't. You still are the same person I fell in love with. You may be here with me, but I feel like I lost you since the accident. Please, I need you, baby.
The most feared prosecutor in Seoul couldn't look at his reflection anymore. Kwon Tae-yong stood at the bathroom sink every morning with his eyes fixed on the faucet. Not the mirror. Never the mirror. Not since the fire 18 months ago had left the left side of his face mapped with burn scars that told a story he wished he could erase. His wife Amara stood 3 feet behind him in the doorway, watching him avoid himself. The distance between them felt like an ocean. 18 months ago, a fire had stolen his face. Now it was stealing his marriage. He heard her breathing change. Softer. Slower. The way it always did when she was trying not to cry. "Taeyong," she said. "Breakfast is ready." He didn't look up. "I'm not hungry." She stood there another moment. Then she left. And the silence that replaced her was louder than anything she could have said. Amara Ikena had grown up in Lagos believing that love was something you fought for. Her mother had told her that. Her grandmother had shown her that. Every woman in her family had loved fiercely, loudly, without apology. She had brought that belief to Seoul 4 years ago when she came as a legal researcher on an international fellowship. She had brought it to a dinner party where a sharp-eyed prosecutor with a dry sense of humor had asked her what brought a Lagos girl to the most competitive legal system in Asia. "The same thing that brought you to yours," she had said. "Justice." He had looked at her for a long time after that. Like she had surprised him. Like he didn't expect to be surprised. They were married 11 months later. For 2 years, their life together had been exactly what neither of them had planned and everything they needed. Taeyong worked brutal hours. Amara finished her research, started consulting, and built a name in international human rights law. They argued about case strategy over dinner. They laughed at things nobody else found funny. They built a life inside the busy, impossible city of Seoul that felt entirely their own. Then came the fire. An arson attack. Someone Taeyong had put away, someone with long arms and a long memory, had paid to send a message. The message was a burning car. Taeyong had pulled a junior colleague out of that car. Had gotten the young man to safety. Had not gotten himself out fast enough. The burns covered 30% of his body. His left arm. His left shoulder. The left side of his neck, jaw, and cheek. He survived. He came home. And then, slowly, quietly, without either of them fully understanding how it happened, he began to disappear. Amara set his breakfast on the table and sat across from the empty chair. She had learned not to wait anymore. Some mornings he came out. Some mornings she ate alone. This was an alone morning. She looked at the chair and tried to remember the last time he had sat in it without wearing his collar pulled up. Without angling his face away from the window, without that careful stillness he had developed. Like if he didn't move too fast, people wouldn't notice him. Like he could make himself invisible through sheer discipline. Her phone buzzed. Her colleague Son is in Lagos. "The conference submission is due Friday. Are you sending the paper or not?" Amara stared at the message for a long time. 6 months ago she had been on track to present at 3 international conferences this year. Her paper on cross-jurisdictional accountability was almost finished. She had been good at her work. She had been building towards something. And then Taeyong had come home from the hospital, and she had quietly, without announcing it, started putting things down. Not because he asked her to. He never asked her to. That was almost worse. "Send it without me," she typed back. "I'll explain later." She put the phone face down on the table and listened to the apartment breathe around her. Somewhere behind the closed bathroom door, her husband was practicing being invisible. He came out around 9, dressed for a day he had no plans to leave the house for. Taeyong had gone back to the prosecutor's office twice since the fire and left both times before noon. His boss, Chief Prosecutor Han, had been patient, generous, had offered desk work, consulting, anything that would keep the best legal mind in the department functioning. Taeyong had said he was fine. He had said he just needed more time. Amara had stopped counting how many times she had heard that. "There's coffee," she said from behind her laptop. "I see it." He poured a cup without looking toward the window. The apartment had good light. That used to be one of their favorite things about it. Now Amara had learned to close the curtains on the left side of the living room without commenting on it. Just closed them. Every morning. A small accommodation that had become invisible through repetition. She hated how natural it had become. "Chief Han called again," she said carefully. Taeyong's jaw tightened. "I know. He says the Shin case needs your analysis. Nobody else understands the corporate fraud angle the way you do. Someone will figure it out. That's not the point." He set down his coffee cup with a precise, controlled click. "What is the point, Amara?" She looked at him directly. He looked at the countertop. This was what she couldn't bear. Not the scars. She had never, not for 1 second, looked at the changed landscape of his face and seen anything other than her husband. The man she loved. The person she had chosen. But he wouldn't let her look. "The point," she said, keeping her voice steady, "is that you are one of the best prosecutorial minds in this country and you are letting one person's cruelty take that from you. It's not about that. What is it about then? Tell me. Because I have been trying to understand for 18 months and every time I get close to understanding, you change the subject." His eyes came up then. Met hers for exactly 2 seconds. Then slid away. "I'm going to work in my office," he said. "I have briefs to review." He carried his coffee and his walls and his careful silence into the room he had turned into a fortress. The door didn't slam. It never slammed. It just closed. Quietly. Finally. Like a verdict. If you are already feeling the weight of Amara and Taeyong's story, stay with me. Because the hardest part isn't the scar on his face. It's the one you can't see. And that's the one she's been trying to reach all along. Three days later, Amara did something Taeyong would never forgive her for. At least that was what she thought at first. He called his sister. Kwon Ji-hai lived in Busan 2.5 hours south by train, and she was the only member of Taeyong's family who had come to see him after the fire. She had sat with Amara in the hospital waiting room for 4 hours, not speaking, just sitting, her spine perfectly straight and her face perfectly composed in the Kwon family way that meant she was holding herself together with everything she had. They had not been close before the fire. Ji-hai had needed time to accept her brother's marriage, a process that had been slow and sometimes painful and ultimately, finally real. She and Amara were not friends exactly, but they were something. Women who loved the same difficult, brilliant, maddening man. "He's getting worse," Amara said when Ji-hai picked up. A long pause. "Define worse." "He hasn't left the apartment in 11 days. He's doing remote brief reviews, but he won't go back to the office. He won't let me see his face. He barely eats at the table anymore. He's..." Her voice broke on the next word and she had to stop and rebuild herself before she could continue. "He's disappearing, Ji-hai. Right in front of me. And I don't know how to stop it." Another pause. Longer this time. "He would hate knowing you called me," Ji-hai said. "Yes. He'll probably be furious. Probably. And you're calling anyway." "I'm calling anyway." Amara closed her eyes. "Because I am out of options and I am not ready to lose him." The silence on the line felt like thinking. "I'll come Saturday," Ji-hai said finally. "Don't tell him." Amara did not tell him. She spent Friday cleaning the apartment, cooking the food she knew Ji-hai liked from the one family dinner that had gone well, and trying to figure out how to explain to her husband that she had gone behind his back because she loved him too much to watch him destroy himself quietly. She was still working on that explanation when Taeyong appeared in the kitchen doorway Friday evening. He had been in his office for 8 hours. She had slid lunch under the door, which had felt humiliating for both of them, which she thought might actually be the point. Sometimes she thought he needed her to feel how bad things had gotten. Like he was trying to make her leave by making staying impossible. "Something smells good," he said. His voice was different. Softer. The hours alone sometimes did this, wore down his defenses to something approaching human. "Doenjang jjigae," she said. "Your mother's recipe." He came into the kitchen slowly. Sat at the table, which he rarely did when she was cooking anymore. She felt the significance of it and carefully did not react. "I heard you on the phone earlier," he said. Her hands stilled on the pot. "I wasn't listening," he added. "I just heard your voice. You sounded..." He stopped. "What?" "Like you were holding yourself together," he said. "You only sound like that when you're afraid." He turned then. Looked at him directly. He was looking at the table, his right hand flat against the surface, his left tucked slightly behind him in the habit he had developed of keeping the scarred arm less visible. "I am afraid," she said. His jaw tightened. "Of me." "For you." "There's a difference." The words seemed to land somewhere tender. He flinched just slightly. "I'm fine. Taeyong." "I said I'm fine, Amara. You haven't left this apartment in 11 days. The number sat between them. He didn't argue it. "I'm working from home." "You're hiding." His eyes came up. Cold and sharp in the way that had once made criminals nervous in courtrooms. She met them without flinching. "I am not," he said slowly, "hiding. You are. And I understand why. I do. But I need you to hear me when I tell you that what I see when I look at you has nothing to do with what happened to your face. You are still the man I married. You are still the most infuriating, brilliant, difficult person I have ever loved. And I am not leaving. But I need you to still be here to stay for." The words hung in the kitchen between the smell of his mother's recipe and the city sounds bleeding through the windows. He looked at her for a long time. Really looked. The way he rarely did anymore. Then he looked away. "I know you're not leaving," he said quietly. "That's not what I'm afraid of." She waited. "I'm afraid," he said, and his voice was so quiet she almost missed it, "that every time someone looks at me I can see them deciding who to pity. And I cannot do that job. I cannot stand in front of a jury and demand they take me seriously, if the first thing anyone sees is damage." Amara turned off the stove. Sat down across from him. Reached across the table. He let her take his right hand. The unscarred one. "You know what I see when I look at you," she said. "Don't." "A man who ran into a burning car to save someone else's life." His hand tensed in hers. "That's what the scar is," she said. "It is not damaged. It is evidence of who you are." He didn't respond. But he didn't pull his hand away either. That night he ate dinner at the table. He counted it as a miracle. Ji-hai arrived Saturday morning with a small bag and the Kwon family composure so perfectly intact that Amara felt a wave of affection for the performance of it. She arrived with something else too. A file folder. Slim, official looking. She handed it to Amara at the door. "Read it before he sees me," she said. "Tell me if you think it helps or hurts." Amara opened the folder. Inside was a profile. A newspaper interview. A photograph. The photograph was of a man in his 40s. One side of his face mapped with burn scars not unlike Taeyong's. He was standing in front of a courtroom. The headline read, "Lee Young-oh returns to the bench. Korea's most decorated appellate judge on scars service and what fire taught him." Amara stared at it for a long moment. "He's a judge," Ji-hai said quietly. He was in a chemical plant explosion 12 years ago. He took 9 months off and then went back. He's been on the bench for 11 years since. He's considered one of the finest legal minds in the country. And Taeyong doesn't know about him? Taeyong doesn't read anything that isn't case-related anymore. Jihai's voice was careful. Neutral. He's narrowed his world down to briefs and shadows. But they know each other. They were in the same law review cohort at university. I thought. She stopped. You thought seeing this might remind him that the courtroom doesn't have to be over, Amara said. Yes. Amara closed the folder. Held it against her chest. He's going to be angry, she said. When he sees you. When he finds out I called you. Jihai met her eyes. Taeyong has been angry at me before. He gets over it. A beat. He loves you very much, you know. That's not what's wrong with him. I know. He thinks he's sparing you. I know that too. Jihai nodded. Then let's go inside and let him be furious at us both and see what's left when that's done. Taeyong was in his office when they came in. He heard unfamiliar footsteps and came out. He saw his sister. His face went through 3 things very fast. Surprise. Bigger. Something that might have been a relief if he hadn't killed it immediately. What are you doing here? Visiting my brother, Jihai said pleasantly. Amara. He turned to his wife. His voice had gone flat. You called her. Yes, Amara said simply. I asked you not to involve my family. You asked me to watch you disappear quietly. I decided not to. The air in the apartment tightened. Jihai walked past her brother to the kitchen, poured herself a glass of water, and sat at the table like she had been invited. Sit down, Taeyong, she said. I came a long way. He stood in the hallway for another moment, rigid with controlled fury. Then, because he had been raised to respect certain things and his sister sitting at his table was one of them, he sat. Mar sat too. The 3 of them were quiet for a moment. You look terrible, Jihai said to her brother. Thank you. I don't mean the scars. I mean you look like someone who has stopped sleeping and started narrating his own tragedy instead. Taeyong's eyes went cold. I didn't ask for your analysis. No, you asked for nothing. That's the problem. Jihai pushed the folder across the table. Look at this. He looked at it without opening it. What is it? Lee Yong-soo. A beat. Something shifted in Taeyong's expression. Open it, Jihai said. He opened it. Looked at the photograph. Looked at the headline. Read it in the way he read everything quickly, completely retaining all of it. Then he closed it. That's different, he said. How? He's a judge. He sits behind a bench. He doesn't have to. He stopped. Face a room, Jihai said. His jaw tightened. A courtroom is a room, she said. A jury is a room. You have faced hostile rooms your entire career. The only thing that is different now is that you have decided to believe they will see your face before they hear your words. They will. For about 30 seconds, Jihai said. And then they will hear your words. Because you are one of the best prosecutors this country has produced. That hasn't burned. That is still there. You are just choosing not to use it. Taeyong stood up abruptly. Walked to the window. Stood with his back to both of them. Amara watched his shoulders. The tension in them. The way they rose and held and didn't fall. You don't understand, he said. Then explain it, Amara said softly. Because I have been here every day for 18 months, Taeyong. I have been here and I love you and I do not understand. He turned. And for the first time in longer than she could remember, he let her see him fully. Both sides. The smooth and the scarred. His face opened in a way she had almost forgotten it could be. I keep thinking, he said, that the best version of me is gone. That was the man I was before, the one who could walk into a room and own it, who never had to think about what people saw first. That man is gone and I don't know who this one is. I don't know if this one is enough. The room held its breath. Amara stood up. Crossed to where he was standing. put her hand against the left side of his face. The scarred side. He stiffened but did not step back. I fell in love with your mind, she said. And your ferocity. And the way you argued with me about jurisdiction until 2 in the morning. Gee, like it was the most important thing in the world. I did not fall in love with your face. She paused. Although it was quite something. His breath caught. Almost a laugh. Not quite. You are the same man, she said. I need you to believe that. Ji-hai said nothing. Just watched her brother's face begin slowly, almost invisibly, to change. He called Chief Prosecutor Han on Monday morning. Amara heard the call from the kitchen and kept very, very still. Sir. Yes, I know. Monday of next week. Yes. The Shin corporate files. I've already reviewed the cross-border transfer documentation. I have notes. Pause. Sir. I'll be there. He hung up. Walked into the kitchen. Poured coffee. Looked for the first time in weeks at the window. Amara waited. I'm going back to the office next week, he said. She kept her voice even. Okay. It may be difficult. Yes. People will look. Yes. And then they'll listen to you and they'll stop noticing anything else. He turned to look at her. Really look. How are you so certain? Because I've watched you work, she said. There is no one in that building who commands a room the way you do. A room isn't one with your face, Taeyong. It's one with your voice. With your preparation. With the fact that you know the law better than the people you're prosecuting. None of that is gone. He held her gaze for a long moment. Then he nodded. Once. Precisely. She understood that was all she was going to get. It was enough. The first day back was hard. He told her so when he came home, which in itself was something. He had started telling her things again. Small things. True things. 3 people looked too long, he said, setting down his bag. Han's assistant had to work to keep her expression neutral. A junior colleague I've never spoken to stared in the elevator. And, Mar said, and then I got into the briefing room and I talked about the Shin case for 90 minutes, and nobody looked at anything except the documents. Amara felt something loosen in her chest that had been locked for 18 months. Told you, she said. He looked at her. And the corner of his mouth, the right corner, curved upward. She had forgotten how much she loved that slight, rare, devastating smile. You told me, he said. Ji-hai called 3 days later. How is he? Going back to work, Amara said. Still difficult. Still quiet. But different. Different how? Like someone cracked a window open. Just slightly. But there's air coming through. Ji-hai was quiet for a moment. And you? How are you? Mar paused. It had been a long time since anyone had asked her that. Or since she had let herself answer honestly. Tired, she said. But hopeful. You should finish your paper. Amara said nothing. He told me, Ji-hai said, when I came. Before you think I've been discussing your business without permission. He mentioned it. That you gave up the conference. He looked like that cost him something to know. He never asked me to. I know. That's not the kind of man he is. Pause. You can love someone and still take care of yourself, Amara. You don't have to choose. She had known this. She had known it intellectually. But somewhere in 18 months of adjusting and accommodating and quietly putting things down, she had forgotten to also pick things back up. I'll think about it, she said. She submitted the paper the next morning. Amara came home 6 weeks later to an apartment that smelled like food. She stopped in the doorway. Taeyong was at the stove. Cooking. Actually cooking, not just reheating the meals she had left, but actively cooking something with garlic and oil and the specific clatter of someone who knew what they were doing. He looked over his shoulder when he heard her. You're early, he said. The conference call wrapped up. She set down her bag slowly. You cooked. I found your mother's groundnut soup recipe. I've been trying to learn it. He turned back to the stove. I may have ruined it. She'll be honored you tried. She walked to the kitchen counter, stood close to him. You're home before 8, she said. I wrapped up the Shin preliminary. We're going to trial. Pause. I won the motion. Something lit up in her chest. Which one? The motion to admit the cross-border financial records. The defense argued jurisdictional exclusion. I argued that the crime transcended the jurisdiction and the evidence followed the crime. He glanced at her. You wrote something similar in your accountability paper. The Achuahin framework. She stared at him. I read your paper, he said as if it were nothing. As if she had not spent 6 weeks wondering if he even knew she had submitted it. It's exceptional work. You should have been at that conference. Her throat felt tight. Next one, she said. Yes. He turned the heat down on the soup. The university in Enugu sent an inquiry. A symposium on international accountability standards in October. I think you should go. That's 3 weeks. I know. You'll be okay? He looked at her fully. She had gotten used to this again, the direct, unflinching way he met her eyes. It had taken time. It had taken the slow, unsteady work of choosing each other again every day. But it was back. I'll be okay, he said. Go to your work, Amara. You didn't marry me to disappear. She felt tears coming and absolutely refused to let them. Neither did I, she said. He reached across and touched her face. His left hand. The scarred one. She turned her cheek into it. I'm sorry, he said quietly. For the months I spent making you invisible because I couldn't stand being seen. You don't have to. I do. I have to say it. His voice was steady. You stayed when staying was genuinely difficult. When I made it difficult. When I gave you every reason to go. And I need you to know that I see that. I see what you did. I see you, she said. I've always seen you. That was all I wanted. He pulled her close. She rested against his chest. Outside, Seoul was doing what it always did, rushing, insisting, moving too fast. Inside the kitchen, with something that might be her mother's groundnut soup simmering on the stove, they stood still. The Shin trial began 4 months later. Amara sat in the gallery on the first day. She had not planned to. It wasn't protocol. But Taeyong had left the apartment that morning already wearing his full prosecutor's armor. The one that made him look like the law itself had decided to show up, and something in her could not stay home. He slipped in at the back. She watched him walk into that courtroom. She watched the room. Watched it do exactly what he had feared. For a moment, eyes went to his face. To the left side. The scar. And then he opened his mouth. Ladies and gentlemen of the court, Kwon Taeyong said. And his voice was the same voice that had argued cases across the city for 15 years. Certain. Built for rooms exactly like this one. The defense will tell you that this case is complicated. It isn't. Money was stolen. Evidence was hidden across 3 borders. And we followed it. The room stopped looking at his face. Amara exhaled. He had been right that people would look. She had been right that they would stop. They were both right. That was marriage, she thought. Not one person is right. 2 people being right together, just about different parts of the same truth. She told her mother about the trial on a video call that night. Her mother, who had come to Seoul for the vow renewal ceremony they were planning for the new year. Who had sat across from Taeyong and finally, seen what her daughter had always seen. He's a good man, her mother said. I see it now. He's a difficult man, Amara said. Those are not mutually exclusive. No, she agreed. They really aren't. Her mother looked at her through the screen with the particular expression that meant she was about to say something true. You chose well, Amara. Not just him. You chose well when you stayed. I didn't know how to leave, she admitted. Even when I thought I should. That's not weakness, her mother said. That's knowing what matters. Taeyong found her on the balcony later that night. The city below them was all lights. Relentless, gorgeous Seoul. The city that had made him and nearly unmade him and was in the process of witnessing his return. He stood beside her. She didn't say anything. He reached over and took her hand. His left hand in her right. The scarred hand. She had stopped treating that hand differently a long time ago. He had only recently noticed that she had always done so. "I've been thinking," he said. "Dangerous." The corner of his mouth lifted. "About the fire." She waited. "I keep trying to think of it as the thing that changed everything," he said. "The before and after. The line. Pause. But I don't think that's right. What do you think it is?" He looked at the city. "An event. One event in a life that has many events. It happened. Change things. But it doesn't define them." He glanced at her. "You are not defined by the hard things that happened to you." "No," she agreed softly. "I was acting like I was," he said. "Like the fire was the final word on who I am. Like it got to decide." His hand tightened around hers. "It doesn't get to decide." "No," she said again. "You do." He nodded slowly. Below them, Seoul rushed and glittered and kept going the way cities do, the way life does, without waiting for anyone to be ready. "I'm still the man you married," he said. Amara turned to look at him. Both sides of his face. The smooth and the scarred. Her husband. Her impossible, brilliant, difficult, returning husband. "You never stopped being him," she said. "You just forgot for a while." He pulled her close then, his arm around her shoulders, her head against the side of his neck, standing together in the dark above the city that had held all of this. "Thank you," he said, "for not letting me forget permanently." "That's the job," she said. "Is that all it is?" She smiled against his shoulder. "No," she said. "It's also love. Stubborn, irrational, completely unnecessary love that showed up and refused to leave." She felt him breathe. Felt the tension in his chest release by a fraction. "Good," he said quietly. "I need it to keep refusing." "It will." The vow renewal was in January, in the garden of the restaurant where they had their first real dinner. The one where he had asked her what brought a Lagos girl to Seoul and she had said justice, and he had looked at her like she had surprised him. Jihai came from Busan. Amara's mother flew in from Lagos. Chief Han came with his wife and cried, which he would deny forever. Son attended via video from Lagos and spent the entire ceremony with her hand over her mouth. Taeyong stood at the front of the garden in January light and watched Amara walk toward him. He looked at her like she was the only person in the world who mattered. She had seen him look at her like that before. In the early days. Before everything happened. She had not realized how much she had missed it until she saw it again. She reached him. Took his hands. Both of them. The smooth and the scarred. "I made promises to you before," he said, his voice low enough for only her. "About a life I would build for you. I want to make new ones." "So do I," she said. "I promise to stop treating my pain as something you need to be protected from." She felt her eyes fill. "I promise to remember that love is not charity," he continued. "That when you stay you are not sacrificing. You are choosing." "I promise," she said, "to keep choosing. Every day. Even when I make it hard. Especially then." He looked at her. Both of them were standing in January light in the city that had held all of it. All the difficulty and distance and breaking and returning. "I'm still," he started. "Don't," she said softly. "You don't have to say it." "I want to," he said. "I'm still me, Amara. I'm still here." She reached up and touched his face. The left side. "I know," she whispered. "I always knew." They kissed in the garden while the people who loved them watched. Not a perfect kiss. A real one. Tasting of effort and relief, and something that had cost both of them enormously and was worth every bit of the cost. And when they pulled apart, Seoul was still doing what it always did. Loud and relentless and alive. They stepped back into it together. 6 months later, Amara presented her paper in Enugu. She stood at a podium in front of 200 legal scholars and spoke for 45 minutes about accountability and borders and the structures that protect people who have no other protection. She got a standing ovation. She called Taeyong immediately afterward, still standing at the edge of the stage, her heels on a floor she'd been too distracted to look at. He picked up on the first ring. "How did it go?" "Standing ovation," she said. Pause. Then, quietly, with a warmth she could feel through the phone from 4,000 miles away, "Of course." She laughed, pressed her hand against her sternum, feeling the fullness of it. The life they had built back from pieces. The man is waiting for her to come home. The work she had refused to permanently abandon. "I'll be home Thursday," she said. "I know. I'm counting." Taeyong. "Yes. Thank you," she said, "for letting me back in." Pause. Then his voice, quiet and certain, "Thank you for not giving up on the door." She held her phone long after they hung up, standing in a conference center in Enugu while the room moved around her, and thought about love. Not perfect love. Not easy love. Love that chose to stay even when staying was hard. Love that cracked open what had closed. Love that looked at the scarred and unchanged parts of a person and said, "I see you, all of you, and I am still here." That was the only kind that mattered. That was the kind they had. And in the end it was everything. If this story stayed with you, if you felt something for Amara and Taeyong and this love that refused to quit, hit subscribe and drop a comment. Tell me which moment hit hardest. Real love doesn't look like perfection. It looks like two people deciding again and again to show up for each other. Until next time, keep believing in love that fights.